My name is Charleston, and at 32 years old, I never thought I would have to choose between my parents and my 8-year-old daughter, Lily. I spent my entire life trying to measure up to my younger brother, Thomas, always feeling like I was running a race where the finish line kept moving. But that Christmas dinner changed everything, when my mother deliberately excluded my daughter from the family meal. Before I tell you how my mother's favoritism finally broke our family, let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. Don't forget to hit subscribe if you've ever had to stand up for your child when no one else would. Growing up in our suburban home in Michigan, the signs of favoritism were always there, though as a child, I lacked the vocabulary to name what was happening. My father, Jack, was a stern businessman who valued practical achievements and financial success. He worked 60 hours a week at his accounting firm and expected his sons to understand the value of hard work from an early age. My mother, Diana, on the other hand, was the emotional orchestrator of our family dynamics. She was outwardly charming, always ready with a camera to capture family moments. But behind that smile was a complex web of emotional manipulation. When Thomas was born just 2 years after me, something shifted in our household. I was too young to understand it then, but looking back, I can pinpoint that as the moment I became second best in my own home. Birthdays were the most obvious indicator. For my 10th birthday, I received a practical backpack for school and a few books. 2 months later, Thomas's 8th birthday featured a backyard carnival, complete with rented games and 15 neighborhood kids. My mother explained the discrepancy by saying, "Thomas is more social, he needs a bigger celebration." This pattern repeated year after year. Even our achievements were measured on different scales. When I brought home straight, as in high school, my father nodded approvingly and said, "That's what we expect." When Thomas managed to pull his grades up to B's and C's that same year, my parents took him out for a celebration dinner. I was invited along as an afterthought. "Your brother struggles more with school," my mother would explain when I questioned the difference. "We need to encourage his improvement." The punishment system in our house followed the same unbalanced approach. If I broke a rule, the consequences were swift and severe. If Thomas broke the same rule, there were always mitigating circumstances that my mother would rush to point out. "He's younger, he doesn't understand yet," she would say, even when the age gap of 2 years hardly justified such different treatment. I tried everything to win their approval. I joined every academic club, graduated at the top of my class, and secured a scholarship to a prestigious university. I believed that if I just achieved enough, worked hard enough, or became successful enough, I would finally receive the same love and attention that seemed to flow so effortlessly to Thomas. College provided some respite from the constant comparison. I thrived in the environment where I was judged on my own merits, not in relation to my brother. I studied business and finance, partly because I knew it would please my father, but also because I genuinely enjoyed the structure and predictability of numbers. It was during my final year at university that I met Amanda. She was studying psychology, and from our first conversation in the campus coffee shop, I felt seen in a way I never had before. She listened when I talked, asked thoughtful questions, and validated my feelings in a way my family never had. After graduation, we stayed in the same city, building our careers and relationship far enough from my family to establish our own identity as a couple, but close enough to maintain ties. When we married 3 years later, my parents attended with appropriate smiles and congratulations, but my mother spent much of the reception fussing over Thomas and his date, making sure photographers captured plenty of pictures of her younger son. Amanda noticed squeezing my hand supportively throughout the evening, but said nothing to disrupt our special day. The birth of our daughter Lily brought pure joy into our lives. Holding that tiny, perfect baby in my arms, I made a silent promise that she would always know how treasured she was. I hoped, perhaps naively, that becoming a parent myself would somehow reset the dynamics with my own parents. Surely they would love their granddaughter equally, regardless of which son had fathered her. Those hopes began to crumble when Thomas had a son, Ethan, just 14 months after Lily was born. From the beginning, the difference in treatment was stark. My mother visited us once after Lily's birth, staying for 2 days and bringing a small stuffed animal and outfit. When Ethan was born, she stayed with Thomas and his wife for 2 full weeks, cooking, cleaning, and arriving with bags of gifts. As the children grew, the pattern continued. Ethan received elaborate birthday parties, organized by my mother, while Lily received a card with $20. Christmas gifts showed the same disparity. Ethan would unwrap gaming systems, bicycles, and piles of toys, while Lily would receive a single moderately priced doll or book. Mom, don't you think this seems a bit unbalanced? I tried to broach the subject once, after a particularly egregious Christmas. What do you mean? She responded with a hurt expression. I love both my grandchildren, but boys and girls like different things and boys need more active toys. Besides, Ethan's been through so much with his parents' busy schedules. The reference to busy schedules was particularly galling, considering that both Thomas and his wife worked standard 40-hour weeks, while Amanda and I both balanced demanding careers with parenting. But this was the narrative my mother had constructed, and no amount of reality could penetrate it. Amanda and I had many late-night discussions about limiting contact with my family. She saw more clearly than I did how the favoritism was affecting Lily, who had begun to notice the differences in treatment by the time she turned 5. Why does Grandma play games with Ethan but not with me? She asked innocently after one family gathering. These questions broke my heart, but I still clung to the hope that things would improve. I wanted my daughter to have grandparents who loved her, and I wanted to repair my own relationship with my parents. So we continued to attend family events, though, with decreasing frequency as the years passed. Last December, as Christmas approached, I found myself once again hoping that this holiday might be different. Lily was 8 now, old enough to fully appreciate family traditions, but also old enough to be deeply hurt by rejection. Amanda suggested we spend the holiday just the 3 of us, creating our own traditions. We could go skiing in Vermont, she suggested one evening as we washed dishes together. Or even just stay home and make it special here. But I wasn't ready to give up. Let's give them one more chance, I said. It's Christmas after all, and Lily deserves to have extended family in her life. Amanda looked skeptical but supportive. Okay, but this is the last time we put ourselves through this if nothing changes. I agreed, not knowing how prophetic her words would prove to be. Lily was ecstatic when we told her we'd be spending Christmas Day with her grandparents, aunt, uncle, and cousin. Despite the uneven treatment, she maintained the natural optimism of childhood, always hoping this would be the time her grandmother would see how special she was. Do you think Grandma will like the present? I made her. Lily asked, holding up the carefully crafted photo frame she had decorated at school containing a picture of the 2 of them from a rare moment of connection at a family picnic the previous summer. She'll love it, sweetheart, I assured her, hoping I wasn't setting her up for disappointment. In the weeks leading up to Christmas, we threw ourselves into preparations. Amanda and I spent hours selecting thoughtful gifts for everyone. For my father, an expensive leather-bound collection of classic novels he had mentioned wanting. For my mother, a designer scarf from a brand she favored well above our usual budget. For Thomas and his wife, tickets to a Broadway show they had expressed interest in seeing. And for Ethan, the exact gaming system he had been asking for according to my mother's detailed hints. These purchases strained our budget considerably. What made the situation more complicated was that for the past year I had been helping my parents with their rent payments. My father's accounting practice had suffered during the economic downturn, and while he was too proud to directly ask for help, my mother had made it clear that they were struggling. Every month I transferred $800 to their account money that could have gone toward Lily's college fund or our own mortgage payments. Amanda never complained about this arrangement, though I knew she had concerns about the one-way nature of the support in our family relationship. Christmas morning dawned bright and clear with a light dusting of snow that made everything look like a holiday card. Lily bounced out of bed at 6, and we enjoyed a quiet family breakfast and exchanged a few small gifts between the 3 of us before preparing to drive to my parents' house. You look beautiful, I told Lily, as she twirled in her new red Christmas dress, her dark hair pulled back with matching ribbons. Do you think Cousin Ethan will want to play with the new card game I got? She asked carefully, placing the wrapped gift in our pile to take along. I'm sure he will, Amanda said, though I caught the flicker of concern in her eyes. The drive to my parents' suburban home took 45 minutes. As we pulled into the driveway, I noticed Thomas's luxury SUV already parked. Despite arriving precisely at the time we were told, it seemed we were the last ones there. Carrying our carefully wrapped gifts, we rang the doorbell. My mother answered with a distracted smile. "Oh, you're here. We've already started the appetizers." Thomas and family arrived early. No mention of the fact that we had arrived exactly on time. Walking into the living room, the contrast was immediately apparent. Thomas, his wife Jessica, and 10-year-old Ethan were settled comfortably by the fire plates of appetizers, in hand, clearly having been there for some time. Uncle Charleston Ethan called out, more interested in the gifts we were carrying than in actually greeting us. My father emerged from his study long enough to offer a handshake and a brief "Merry Christmas, son." He nodded at Amanda and gave Lily an awkward pat on the head before returning to what he called urgent, year-end accounting matters. The gift exchange followed the now familiar pattern. Ethan tore through a mountain of presents, including multiple expensive gifts from my parents. Lily received a single sweater from them that was not only plain compared to the exciting toys Ethan received, but also visibly too small for her current size. "Thank you, Grandma," and Grandpa, Lily said, politely folding the sweater carefully, despite her obvious disappointment. When Lily presented her handmade frame to my mother, I watched carefully for the reaction. My mother glanced at it briefly, said a quick, "How nice," and set it aside without even commenting on the photo it contained. Minutes later, she was exclaiming over a simple drawing Ethan had made, promising to treasure it forever and immediately placing it on the mantel. I exchanged glances with Amanda, whose expression told me she was reaching her limit with the situation. I squeezed her hand silently, asking for patience. Just get through dinner, I thought. Then we can go home and salvage what's left of Christmas. As the afternoon wore on, the adults shared obligatory conversation about work and neighborhood gossip while the children played nearby. Or rather, Ethan played with his new toys, while Lily watched hopefully from the sidelines, occasionally attempting to join in, only to be ignored or dismissed by her cousin. I noticed my mother repeatedly drawing attention to Ethan's every move, exclaiming over his cleverness or complimenting his appearance. Lily might as well have been invisible. When my mother announced it was time to move to the dining room for Christmas dinner, I felt a mixture of relief that the day was progressing and dread about what new hurt might be in store. I had no idea how prophetic that feeling of dread would prove to be. The dining room had been transformed with my mother's typical holiday flair. The table was set with her best china crystal glasses sparkling under the chandelier light. A large poinsettia centerpiece took pride of place, flanked by tall red candles. Christmas music played softly from the speaker system my father had installed last year. "Everyone, take your seats." My mother directed, pointing out place cards she had written in her elegant script. I noticed immediately that the seating arrangement placed Thomas's family in the prime positions nearest to my parents, while our family was relegated to the far end of the table. This was nothing new, but I still felt the familiar sting of being literally and figuratively distanced. My mother disappeared into the kitchen, returning with a large platter of roast turkey that she set before my father for carving. She made several more trips, bringing out bowls of mashed potatoes, green bean casserole, cranberry sauce, and all the traditional fixings of a Christmas feast. The food, I had to admit, looked and smelled delicious. "This looks wonderful, Diana," Amanda said sincerely, always making an effort despite the undercurrents. "Thank you, dear. I was up at 6 preparing everything." My mother replied with the martyred tone she often adopted when receiving compliments on her domestic efforts. My father began carving the turkey, and my mother supervised the distribution of food. Plates were filled and passed down first to Thomas, then Jessica, then Ethan. My parents served themselves next, then passed plates to Amanda and me. It wasn't until Amanda and I had received our plates that I realized something was wrong. There was no plate for Lily. I looked around thinking perhaps my mother had forgotten to set a place for her, but there was a place setting with Lily's name card. Just no food. "Mom," I said, trying to keep my tone light, "I think you forgot Lily's dinner." My mother looked up, her expression shifting to one I recognized all too well. It was the look she got when she was about to say something she knew was hurtful, but had decided was justified. "Oh, I'm afraid there wasn't quite enough turkey to go around," she said with exaggerated regret. I didn't expect everyone to want such large portions. I stared at her in disbelief. The turkey was enormous, more than enough to feed twice our number. Even now, the platter held several untouched slices. "There's plenty of turkey right there," I pointed out, my voice tight. "Well, yes, but that's being saved for seconds," she replied smoothly. And after the way Lily upset Ethan earlier, I thought she might not have much appetite anyway. I was momentarily stunned into silence. Upset Ethan, I had been in the room the entire time and had seen no such thing. The most Lily had done was ask to join in playing with one of his new games, a request he had rebuffed with a selfishness that no adult had corrected. I glanced at Lily, whose small face reflected confusion, turning rapidly to hurt as she processed the fact that her grandmother had deliberately excluded her from the Christmas meal. Her eyes began to shine with unshed tears, but she pressed her lips together, trying to be brave. "That's ridiculous," Amanda said quietly but firmly. "Lily did nothing wrong, and even if the children had a disagreement, withholding food is never appropriate." My mother's expression hardened. "I'm not withholding food. There simply wasn't enough. Perhaps if you had contributed a dish instead of just showing up empty-handed, there would be enough for everyone." This was rich, coming from the woman who insisted on controlling every aspect of holiday meals and had specifically told us not to bring anything when I had offered. Before I could respond, Thomas interjected. "Mom, can I have some more turkey? This is amazing." "Of course, sweetheart," my mother replied, her voice instantly warming as she reached for his plate. And there it was in plain view of everyone at the table. Ethan, the child who had supposedly been upset by Lily receiving seconds, while my daughter sat with an empty place setting. Something shifted inside me at that moment. A lifetime of accepting unequal treatment, of making excuses for my parents' behavior, of hoping things would change if I just tried harder or achieved more, crystallized into a single clarifying moment of truth. This would never last. Change. And I would not allow my child to grow up thinking this was what she deserved. Without a word, I cut my own plate of turkey in half and transferred a portion to Lily's empty plate. I added some of my mashed potatoes, green beans, and a dinner roll from the basket that had conveniently stopped its circulation before reaching our end of the table. "Here you go, sweetheart," I said to Lily, loud enough for everyone to hear. Amanda silently did the same, adding some of her food to Lily's plate. Her eyes met mine with a mixture of sadness and resolve. No words were needed between us. We both knew this would be the last Christmas dinner we would spend in this house. The remainder of the meal proceeded with strained conversation. My mother acted as though nothing unusual had happened, chattering about neighborhood gossip and repeatedly drawing attention to Ethan's achievements in school and sports. Thomas and Jessica either didn't recognize or chose to ignore the significance of what had transpired, happily accepting the preferential treatment as their due. My father, as was his lifelong pattern, remained largely silent, neither participating in my mother's favoritism nor standing against it. His complicity through inaction was perhaps the most painful betrayal of all. Lily ate quietly, her usual bubbly personality subdued by hurt. She answered questions directed at her, with polite but minimal responses. I could see her struggling to understand what she had done to deserve such treatment, and the thought broke my heart. Under the table, Amanda's hand found mine, squeezing gently in solidarity. We had no appetite for the pie that followed dinner, though my mother made a show of serving large slices to Thomas's family, while offering much smaller portions to us. As soon as it was reasonably possible to do so, without creating an immediate scene, I knew what I needed to do. I had spent a lifetime hoping for change that would never come. I had spent years exposing my daughter to emotional harm while I waited for my parents to be the people I needed them to be. That ended today. While everyone was still finishing their pie, I quietly leaned over to Amanda and whispered, "Let's go." She nodded, immediately understanding all that those two words contained. We had reached our breaking point. "Lily," I said softly to my daughter, "it's time for us to head home." "But what about the Christmas movie Grandma said we would watch?" Lily asked, her voice small but hopeful that some part of this day might still be salvaged. "We'll watch a movie at home, just the three of us," Amanda assured her, already gathering her purse and coat. I stood up and began to collect our things, including Lily's too small sweater and the other modest gifts we had received. My movement caught my mother's attention. "You're not leaving already, are you?" she asked with a frown. "We haven't even done the family photo yet." "Yes, we're going home now," I said, keeping my voice level, despite the emotions churning inside me. But why she pressed her tone, suggesting I was being unreasonable. "It's Christmas. Family should be together on Christmas." I took a deep breath. I could feel Thomas and Jessica watching with surprise, unused to seeing any deviation from the script my mother had written for our family gatherings. "We're leaving because I won't allow my daughter to be treated as less important than anyone else in this family," I said clearly. "What happened at dinner was deliberate and cruel, and it's not something we're willing to accept." My mother's face shifted instantly to an expression of wounded innocence. "I don't know what you're talking about. There simply wasn't enough food. I can't help it if Lily is overly sensitive." "There was enough food for Ethan to have seconds while Lily had none," Amanda pointed out quietly. My father finally looked up from his plate, seeming to realize that something significant was happening. "Now, son, there's no need to overreact. Your mother worked hard on this dinner. This isn't about the food, Dad. It's about years of favoritism and the message it sends to both children. Ethan is being taught that he matters more, and Lily is being taught that she matters less. Neither is healthy, and we won't participate in it anymore." Thomas scoffed. "You always were too sensitive, Charleston. Mom and Dad have always been fair." The absurdity of this statement might have made me laugh if the situation weren't so painful. "We clearly have different definitions of fairness," was all I said in response. "You're ruining Christmas," my mother accused, tears appearing on cue. "After everything I've done to make today special." "Special? For whom?" Amanda asked, her normally gentle voice firm. Lily stood beside us now, coat on confusion, and hurt evident in her expression, despite her brave attempt to maintain composure. "We appreciate the invitation," I said formally, "but we're going home now. Merry Christmas." With that, we walked out, ignoring my mother's protests and my father's belated attempt to intervene. Thomas remained seated, shaking his head at what he clearly viewed as an overreaction on my part. The drive home was quiet at first. In the back seat, Lily finally let a few tears fall. "Did I do something bad, Daddy?" she asked in a small voice. I had to swallow hard before answering. "No, sweetheart. You did absolutely nothing wrong. Sometimes adults have problems that have nothing to do with children, even when it seems like they do." Amanda turned in her seat to face our daughter. "Your grandmother has some unfair ideas about how to treat people. That's not your fault, and it's not about you. It's about her." "But why doesn't she like me as much as Ethan?" Lily persisted, asking the question that cut straight to the heart of the matter. "That's a question I've been asking most of my life, sweetie," I admitted, meeting her eyes briefly in the rearview mirror. "Some people just play favorites, and it's not fair, but it doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you. You are perfect exactly as you are, and we love you more than anything in the world." When we arrived home, our house felt like a sanctuary after the tension of my parents' home. By silent agreement, Amanda and I set about creating a new Christmas celebration just for the three of us. We put on holiday music, made hot chocolate with extra marshmallows, and settled in to watch Lily's favorite Christmas movie. By the end of the evening, Lily was smiling again, caught up in our impromptu celebration. As I tucked her into bed that night, she wrapped her arms around my neck. "This was the best Christmas ever, Daddy," she said sleepily, "because we were together." Her simple wisdom brought tears to my eyes. "You're right, sweetheart. That's what really matters." After Lily was asleep, Amanda and I sat on the couch with glasses of wine, processing what had happened. "I'm proud of you," Amanda said, leaning her head on my shoulder. "I know how hard that was." "I should have done it years ago," I replied. "I kept hoping they would change, that they would see what they were doing. But they can't, or won't." "What do you think will happen now?" she asked. "They'll try to make me feel guilty. My mother will play the victim. My father will avoid direct conflict but back her up in the end. Thomas will think I'm overreacting. The usual family dynamics, just with higher stakes." As if on cue, my phone buzzed with a text message. It was from my father, sent at 9:47 p.m. "Rent's due tomorrow." The implications were clear. My standing up to the family's toxic dynamics would have financial consequences. The support I had been providing my parents was now being wielded as leverage. I showed Amanda the message, and she shook her head in disbelief. That's their response. Not concern for how Lily felt. Not an apology, just a reminder that they can hurt us financially. It confirms we made the right decision, I said, feeling strangely calm despite the implied threat. If this is how they respond to being called out on their behavior, there's no hope for a healthy relationship. What will we do? Amanda asked practically. That's $800 a month we hadn't planned on keeping in our budget. We'll figure it out, I said, with more confidence than I felt. Our daughter's emotional well-being is worth more than money. Absolutely, Amanda agreed without hesitation. We'll make whatever adjustments we need to. As we went to bed that night, I felt a mixture of grief for the family relationships I had always wanted, but never truly had, and relief at finally acknowledging the reality of the situation. The path ahead would be difficult, but for the first time in my life I felt like I was making choices based on truth rather than hope or obligation. The days following Christmas brought exactly the response I had expected from my family. My mother called repeatedly, leaving tearful voicemails about how I had broken her heart and ruined Christmas with my overreaction. Not once did she acknowledge what she had done to Lily or offer an apology. Charleston, I don't understand why you're doing this to the family, one message began. After everything your father and I have done for you and your little family. Ethan is absolutely devastated that you left so abruptly. You know how sensitive he is. The irony of her describing Ethan as sensitive after dismissing Lily's feelings so completely was not lost on me. Thomas called once, his tone condescending as he suggested I should apologize to our mother. You know how she is, he said. She didn't mean anything by it. You're making a big deal out of nothing. Would you say that if it had been Ethan who was denied dinner while everyone else ate, I asked him? His momentary silence before changing the subject told me everything I needed to know. Extended family members began to take sides. My Aunt Catherine, my mother's sister, texted to tell me I was being selfish and should think about how much my behavior was hurting my parents. My Uncle Robert, my father's brother, surprised me with a more supportive message. I saw what happened at dinner. Been watching this dynamic for years. About time someone called it out. The most difficult part was explaining to Lily why we wouldn't be seeing her grandparents for a while. She was at an age where she understood more than we sometimes gave her credit for, but still young enough to blame herself for adult conflicts. Is Grandma mad at me? She asked one evening as Amanda was helping her with homework. Amanda looked up at me silently, asking how much we should share with our daughter. Grandma isn't mad at you. I began carefully, sitting down at the table with them. But Grandma and Grandpa have some ideas about family that aren't very fair or healthy. Like not giving me dinner, Lily asked directly. Yes, like that, I confirmed. And other ways, they treat people differently that aren't fair. But why, she persisted. I struggled with how to explain complex adult dysfunction to an 8-year-old. Some adults get stuck in patterns of behavior that aren't good, even when they don't mean to hurt people. Right now, Grandma and Grandpa are stuck in some bad patterns and they're not ready to change them. Will they ever change? Lily asked. I hope so, I said honestly. But it's not something we can make happen. It's a choice they have to make for themselves. Is that why we're not going to their house anymore? Yes, Amanda joined in. Sometimes when people keep doing things that hurt us, the healthiest choice is to take a step back until they're ready to treat us with respect and kindness. Lily thought about this for a moment, like when I had to stop playing with Zoe at school because she kept saying mean things about my art. Very similar, I agreed, grateful for the age-appropriate parallel she had provided. We talked to Zoe about how her words made you feel, but she kept doing it, so you needed some space from that friendship. That doesn't mean you hate Zoe or that you'll never be friends again. It just means you're taking care of yourself while she figures some things out. This explanation seemed to satisfy Lily, though I knew the conversation would need to be revisited as she processed the situation over time. Financially, the sudden withdrawal of support from my parents created challenges. The $800 I had been sending them each month had been a significant portion of our disposable income. We sat down to revise our budget, cutting back on non-essentials and postponing some home renovation plans we had been considering. We'll need to be more careful with eating out, Amanda noted as we reviewed our spending habits. And maybe postpone that trip to Disney we were planning for spring break. I hate that Lily has to miss out because of this, I said, feeling a pang of guilt. She's not missing out on what matters, Amanda reminded me. She has parents who love her and protect her. That's worth more than any trip. She was right, of course, but I still felt the weight of responsibility for the situation. If I had established better boundaries years ago, perhaps we wouldn't be in this position now. The financial pressure increased when my car needed unexpected repairs the following month. I briefly considered reaching out to my parents, swallowing my pride for the sake of our budget, but Amanda gently talked me out of it. That would just reinforce the dynamic, she pointed out. They use money as control. If we go back now, it tells them their tactic worked. She was right again. We tightened our belts further and managed the repair costs by delaying some other expenses. In late January, I received a call from Lily's school counselor asking if we could meet to discuss some concerns. Lily seems withdrawn lately, the counselor, Miss Barnes, explained when we sat down in her office. Her teacher noticed she's been quieter in class and sometimes seems sad during free time. When I spoke with her, she mentioned some family changes. I explained the situation as objectively as I could, emphasizing that we were working to help Lily understand that the family conflict wasn't her fault. Miss Barnes nodded understandingly. Children often internalize family tensions even when adults try to shield them. It might be helpful for Lily to have a regular time to talk with me about her feelings about this situation. We'd appreciate that, Amanda said. We're trying to be open with her at an age-appropriate level, but having another trusted adult to talk to would be good for her. I also have some books that might help, Miss Barnes offered. Stories about different kinds of family dynamics that might help normalize what she's experiencing. We left with a list of recommended reading and a follow-up appointment for Lily. It was painful to know that our daughter was struggling with the fallout of my family's dysfunction, but I was grateful for the professional support and determined to help her through this transition. February brought an unexpected development. My boss called me into his office one afternoon. "Charleston, we've been impressed with your work on the Henderson account," he began. "The client specifically mentioned your attention to detail and creative approach to their financial planning needs." "Thank you, sir," I responded, genuinely pleased by the recognition. "We've been considering who should take over as team leader now that Marjorie is retiring and your name is at the top of the list. It would mean more responsibility and a 15% increase in salary. Are you interested?" The promotion couldn't have come at a better time, both professionally and financially. The salary increase would more than cover the money we had been sending to my parents, allowing us to rebuild our savings and proceed with the plans we had put on hold. When I shared the news with Amanda that evening, she hugged me tightly. "I'm so proud of you. This couldn't be more deserved." "The timing feels like more than coincidence," I admitted. "Almost like the universe is confirming we made the right choice in standing up for ourselves and Lily. Or maybe it's showing you what's possible when you put your energy into healthy relationships, instead of trying to fix broken ones," she suggested thoughtfully. The promotion brought new challenges and longer hours temporarily, but also a renewed sense of professional fulfillment. I found myself more focused and confident at work, unburdened by the constant undercurrent of family stress that had previously occupied so much mental space. In March, my father called. It was our first direct communication since the Christmas dinner incident, aside from his terse text about rent. "Charleston," he began awkwardly, "your mother's birthday is coming up next week." "I'm aware of the date, Dad," I replied, keeping my tone neutral. "She's been upset about, well, the situation. It would mean a lot to her if you called or sent a card. Maybe brought Lily by for a visit." I took a deep breath. "I appreciate you reaching out, Dad. I'm happy to call Mom for her birthday, but before we consider visits, we need to address what happened at Christmas." "That was months ago," he said dismissively. "Your mother was just having a bad day. You know how she gets when she's stressed about hosting." "This isn't about one bad day," I countered. "It's about a pattern of behavior that's harmful to Lily. I can't expose my daughter to that without some acknowledgement of the problem and commitment to change." His sigh was heavy with frustration. "What exactly do you want?" I want Mom to acknowledge that deliberately excluding Lily from the Christmas meal was wrong. I want both of you to commit to treating both grandchildren equally. And I want some recognition that the favoritism didn't start with the grandchildren. It's been going on since Thomas and I were kids. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. "I'll talk to your mother," he finally said, though his tone suggested he considered the conversation hopeless. I didn't expect much to come from this exchange, and I was right. My father never called back with a response from my mother. I sent a birthday card and left a brief voicemail on her birthday, but received no acknowledgement of either gesture. By April, it became clear that reconciliation would not be easy or quick if it was possible at all. My parents remained entrenched in their perspective that I was overreacting to a minor incident, while I remained firm in my requirement for acknowledgement and change before resuming normal family contact. The situation was painful but increasingly clear. Some relationships cannot be fixed through effort or compromise when one party refuses to acknowledge the fundamental problem. My focus needed to be on protecting my daughter and building a healthy family environment for her, even if that meant a significantly reduced relationship with my parents. As spring progressed, I realized I needed help processing the complex emotions surrounding the family estrangement. At Amanda's suggestion, I made an appointment with a therapist who specialized in family dynamics. Dr. Ellen Winters was a calm, insightful woman in her 50s who listened carefully to my family history during our first session. "What you're describing is a classic golden child scapegoat dynamic," she explained after I had shared the pattern of favoritism. "It's a form of family dysfunction that can persist across generations if not addressed." "So, this isn't just about my mother having a preference for my brother?" I asked. "It's a systemic issue," Dr. Winters clarified. "Your mother may be the most obvious perpetrator, but your father enables it through his silence, and your brother reinforces it by accepting the preferential treatment as his due. It creates roles that everyone in the family unconsciously plays." Over several sessions, I began to understand how deeply this dynamic had shaped my self-perception and behavior. I had spent my life trying to earn love that should have been freely given, measuring my worth by impossible standards, while watching my brother receive approval for simply existing. The most important thing now, Dr. Winters emphasized, is breaking this cycle so it doesn't affect Lily. Children are remarkably perceptive. She would have internalized messages about her value based on how your parents treated her just as you did growing up. "I'm trying to make sure she knows this isn't about her," I said. "That's crucial," the therapist agreed. "But equally important is modeling healthy boundaries. By standing up to this treatment, you're teaching her that she deserves respect and equal treatment." That's a powerful message. As I worked through these issues in therapy, Amanda was researching alternative family traditions we could establish. She connected with her sister in Colorado, whom we hadn't seen in several years due to distance, and our usual commitment to spending holidays with my parents. "Lisa has invited us to spend next Christmas with them," Amanda told me one evening. "They have that big cabin near Boulder with plenty of room for all of us. Lily would love playing in the snow with her cousins." The prospect of a Christmas filled with genuine warmth and equal treatment for everyone felt like a gift in itself. We accepted the invitation and began making plans, giving Lily something positive to look forward to. In May, we received an unexpected visitor. My Uncle Robert, my father's brother, stopped by one Saturday afternoon. "Hope you don't mind me dropping in," he said somewhat awkwardly as I invited him in. "I was in the area for a business meeting and thought I'd check in on you folks." Over coffee in our kitchen, Robert shared some insights I had never known. "Your father and I grew up with the same kind of favoritism," he revealed. "Our mother always preferred Jack. He was the smart one, the responsible one, the one who would carry on the family name with pride. I was just the backup, the spare." "Dad never mentioned that," I said, surprised. "He wouldn't," Robert nodded. "Jack dealt with it by becoming exactly what our mother wanted. Perfect grades, respectable career, proper family. I dealt with it by rebelling, moving across the country, making my own path. We both responded to the same dysfunction in different ways. But now Dad's perpetuating the same pattern I pointed out." "That's often how it works," Robert said sadly. "We either repeat what we know, or we consciously break the cycle. Jack chose to repeat it, though I don't think he's fully aware of that choice." When your mother showed a preference for Thomas, it probably felt normal to him, familiar. He knew how to operate in that system because he'd been the beneficiary of a similar one growing up. This perspective helped me understand my father's complicity in a new light. It didn't excuse his behavior, but it explained it in a way that allowed me to feel compassion alongside my disappointment. For what it's worth, Robert added, as he was leaving, I think you're doing the right thing by protecting Lily. I wish someone had done the same for you and me when we were kids. His visit provided an unexpected sense of validation and family connection during a time when I was feeling the absence of my immediate family keenly. Summer brought another challenge when Lily's school year ended. In previous years, she had spent 2 weeks with my parents while Amanda and I worked. That arrangement was obviously no longer viable, but it created childcare challenges. I could take some unpaid leave, Amanda suggested as we discussed options. That would strain our budget again. Just when we're getting back on track, I worried. Ultimately, we found a compromise. Amanda adjusted her work schedule to 4 10-hour days. I arranged to work from home 1 day a week, and we enrolled Lily in a day camp program she was excited about for the remaining 3 days. It was a juggling act that required coordination and some sacrifices, but it worked. In July, I received an email from Thomas that surprised me with its conciliatory tone. Charleston, I've been thinking about what happened at Christmas. While I still think you overreacted in the moment, I've been watching how Mom interacts with Ethan versus Lily more carefully. I'm not saying I agree with everything you claimed, but I can see some differences in treatment that aren't fair. Would you be willing to meet for coffee sometime to talk? This was the closest thing to an acknowledgement I had received from any family member. I agreed to meet Thomas at a cafe halfway between our homes the following weekend. The conversation was awkward at first, both of us unsure how to navigate this new territory, where the unspoken family rules were suddenly open for discussion. Jessica pointed some things out that I hadn't noticed, before Thomas admitted after we'd moved past small talk. Like how Mom always calls Ethan her special boy, but never uses endearments like that for Lily. Or how Dad takes Ethan fishing but has never offered to take Lily even though she's mentioned wanting to go. These patterns are easy to miss when you're benefiting from them, I said, trying not to sound accusatory. Thomas nodded slowly. I always thought you were just overly sensitive. That's what Mom would say whenever you brought up anything that seemed unfair. That's a common tactic, I explained. If she can frame me as the problem, she doesn't have to examine her own behavior. I'm not ready to say everything you've claimed is true, Thomas cautioned, but I am sorry about what happened at Christmas. That was clearly wrong, and I should have said something. It wasn't a complete acknowledgement of the broader pattern, but it was a start. We parted with a tentative plan to meet again the following month, possibly with our children, but without our parents. In August, we arranged a careful reintroduction between the cousins. Ethan and Lily had always gotten along reasonably well when left to their own devices without the influence of adult expectations and favoritism. We met at a neutral location, a public park with a playground, where the children could interact while the adults maintained careful supervision. To my relief, the children quickly fell into playing together after an initial period of shyness. Ethan, at 10, was at an age where he could have considered himself too old to play with an 8-year-old, but he seemed genuinely happy to see his cousin. Mom said you guys were mad at Grandma and Grandpa, he mentioned to Lily as they sat on swings. Not mad, really, Lily replied with a wisdom beyond her years. Just taking some space because sometimes Grandma isn't very nice to me. She does like to tell everyone I'm her favorite, Ethan admitted, showing more awareness than I had given him credit for. It makes me feel weird sometimes. This overheard exchange gave me hope that the next generation might be more perceptive about these unhealthy dynamics than we had been as children. As summer turned to fall, we settled into our new normal. My parents made occasional attempts at contact, usually through indirect means or with strings attached. My mother would send messages through mutual friends about how much she missed Lily. My father would call with thinly veiled suggestions that we should put this nonsense behind us and return to family gatherings. In September, I decided it was time to attempt one final direct conversation. If there was any possibility of salvaging a relationship with my parents, it would require clear communication about expectations and boundaries. I arranged to meet them at a restaurant-neutral territory where everyone would be incentivized to maintain composure. "We miss seeing Lily," my mother began as soon as we were seated. "She's growing up so fast and we're missing it." "I understand that," I acknowledged. "And in an ideal world, Lily would have a close relationship with her grandparents. But that relationship needs to be healthy and affirming for her." "We've always loved Lily," my father insisted. "I believe you love her in your way," I said carefully. "But love isn't just a feeling, it's how you treat someone. And the way Lily has been treated compared to Ethan sends a clear message that she's less valued." My mother's expression hardened. "So you're punishing us because you think we love Ethan more? That's absurd. Children are different and need different things." "This isn't about punishment," I explained. "It's about protection. Lily deserves to be around people who make her feel valued and important, not people who deliberately exclude her from family meals or consistently give her less attention and fewer gifts than her cousin receives." "You're still hung up on that one dinner," my mother sighed dramatically. "I've explained that there wasn't enough food." "Mom, there was plenty of food. You gave Ethan seconds while Lily had nothing. And that was just the most obvious example of a pattern that's been going on her whole life and mine." My father shifted uncomfortably. "What exactly do you want from us, Charleston?" "I want you to acknowledge that there's been a pattern of favoritism. I want a commitment to treat both grandchildren equally. And I want you to understand why this matters so much." My mother crossed her arms defensively. "So unless we admit we're terrible grandparents, we don't get to see Lily, that's emotional blackmail." "It's not about admitting you're terrible. It's about recognizing a harmful pattern so it can change. We all make mistakes as parents and grandparents. The question is whether we're willing to acknowledge them and do better." The conversation continued in circles, with my parents alternating between defense denial and attempts to make me feel guilty for keeping Lily away. By the end of the lunch, it was clear that no meaningful progress would be made. My mother remained unwilling to acknowledge any wrongdoing, and my father remained unwilling to challenge her perspective. As I drove home, I felt a mixture of sadness and clarity. I had genuinely hoped for some breakthrough, some moment of recognition that would open the door to healing. Instead, I had confirmation that the dysfunction was too entrenched for my parents to address, at least for now. When I shared the outcome with Amanda that evening, she wrapped her arms around me in a comforting embrace. "You did everything possible," she assured me. "You were clear, reasonable, and open to reconciliation with appropriate boundaries. The fact that they couldn't meet those basic requirements isn't your failure, it's theirs." "I know," I sighed. "I just wish it could be different for Lily's sake." "Lily is going to be fine," Amanda said confidently. "She has us. She has my family. She has her friends at school. She's learning valuable lessons about self-respect and healthy relationships. Those will serve her better in the long run than maintaining contact with grandparents who can't treat her with basic fairness." She was right, and deep down I knew it. Lily had indeed shown remarkable resilience throughout this challenging year. Her sessions with the school counselor had helped her process her feelings, and the clearer boundaries had actually seemed to increase her sense of security rather than diminishing it. As fall progressed, we focused on creating new traditions and strengthening the relationships that were healthy in our lives. We spent more time with Amanda's family, connected with neighbors who had children Lily's age, and built a chosen family of friends who demonstrated what genuine, loving relationships should look like. The journey wasn't easy, but it was necessary. And with each passing month, the weight of trying to fix what couldn't be fixed grew lighter, replaced by the joy of nurturing what was healthy and whole in our lives. 1 year after that fateful Christmas dinner, our lives had transformed in ways I couldn't have imagined. The initial pain of family estrangement had gradually given way to a sense of peace that comes from living authentically and protecting what truly matters. Lily had blossomed over the past year. Without the subtle undermining of her confidence that came from her grandmother's preferential treatment, she had grown more self-assured and expressive. Her teacher remarked on her increased participation in class, and she had developed deeper friendships with several classmates. "I don't feel scared to try things anymore," she told me one day, as we worked on a science project together. Remember how I used to worry that I'd do it wrong and everyone would laugh? I remember I said, recalling how anxious she had often been about making mistakes in front of others. I don't worry about that now. If I make a mistake, I just fix it and keep going. This simple statement reflected a profound shift in her approach to challenges, one that filled me with pride and reassurance that we had made the right choice, difficult though it had been. My own growth had been equally significant. The therapy sessions with Dr. Winters had helped me recognize and begin to heal from the effects of growing up as the less favored child. I had carried a deep-seated belief that I needed to earn love through achievement and perfection, a belief that had driven me to exhaustion in both my personal and professional lives. Learning to recognize my inherent worth independent of accomplishments or others' approval was an ongoing process, but one that had already brought greater peace and authenticity to my life. Amanda and I had drawn closer through facing this challenge together. Our partnership had always been strong, but navigating this difficult terrain as a united front had deepened our trust and commitment to each other. We had just returned from spending Christmas with Amanda's sister and her family in Colorado, a joyful week of sledding, board games, and genuine family connection where all the children were treated with equal affection and attention. The contrast to our experience the previous year couldn't have been more stark. In January, I had an unexpected encounter with Thomas at a professional networking event in the city. We had maintained cautious contact over the past year, meeting occasionally for coffee or bringing the children together for supervised playdates, but had carefully avoided discussing our parents after that initial conversation. "How was your Christmas?" he asked, somewhat awkwardly as we stood with drinks at the periphery of the gathering. "Wonderful," actually, I replied honestly. "We went to Colorado, spent it with Amanda's family. Lily had an amazing time with her cousins there. How was yours?" Thomas hesitated, then admitted, "Not great, to be honest. Mom was in a mood the whole time. Nothing anyone did was right. Dad spent most of the day in his office claiming he had year-end reports to finish. There was no satisfaction in hearing this, only a sad confirmation that the dysfunction continued regardless of my family's presence or absence. I've been thinking a lot about what you said last year," Thomas continued, surprising me. "About the favoritism thing. Jessica and I have been talking about it too. She says she's noticed it more clearly since you guys stepped back." Oh, I kept my response neutral, not wanting to push. "Yeah. Last month, Mom offered to take Ethan shopping for a winter coat, but didn't even ask about Jessica's daughter from her first marriage. When Jessica pointed it out, Mom got really defensive and said some pretty hurtful things about Maddie not being real family, since she's not biologically related to Mom." I winced, recognizing the pattern. That must have been painful for Jessica and Maddie. Thomas nodded slowly. It was. And it made me think about how this has probably been happening for years with Lily, but I didn't notice or didn't want to notice. I owe you an apology for that. This acknowledgement, coming a full year after the breaking point, was unexpected but welcome. It suggested that perhaps my standing firm had created space for others to recognize the dysfunction as well. "I appreciate that, Thomas," I said sincerely. "How are you handling it now?" He sighed. "We're setting some boundaries like you did. Not as completely maybe, but we're being more careful about the time Maddie spends with Mom, making sure one of us is always present to intervene if needed." I felt no triumph in knowing my brother was now experiencing some of the same painful realizations I had faced. Instead, I felt a mixture of sadness for the continuing pattern and hope that broader awareness might eventually lead to change. Back at home, I continued to focus on creating the family environment I wanted for Lily, one where she felt unconditionally loved and valued for exactly who she was. "You know what I love about you" became a regular part of our family conversation with Amanda and I, taking turns sharing specific qualities we appreciated in Lily. "I love how you keep trying even when something is difficult. I love how you notice when other people are sad and try to help them feel better. I love your creative ideas for solving problems." These weren't empty compliments, but genuine observations helping Lily internalize a sense of her own worth based on character rather than performance or comparison to others. We maintained minimal contact with my parents, limited to occasional brief phone calls and holiday cards. My mother continued to press for more access to Lily, but always on her terms without acknowledgement of past behavior or commitment to change. My father remained largely passive, occasionally expressing regret about the situation, but unwilling to address its causes directly. The financial independence we had established proved liberating in unexpected ways. Without the leverage of economic support, my parents had lost their primary means of control. The budget adjustments we had made, while initially challenging, had ultimately led to a more mindful approach to spending and saving that served our family's true priorities. As spring approached again, bringing the cycle of seasons full circle from where our journey had begun, I found myself reflecting on the difficult but necessary lessons of the past year. First, that love should never be conditional or comparative. Each child deserves to be valued for who they are, not measured against siblings or cousins. Second, that establishing healthy boundaries isn't selfish or cruel, but often the most loving choice for all involved, even when it causes short-term pain. Third, that patterns of dysfunction rarely change without direct confrontation and consequences. Hoping for improvement while maintaining the same dynamics almost never works. Fourth, that children are incredibly perceptive. They notice unfair treatment long before they have the vocabulary to name it, and they internalize messages about their worth based on how they are treated. Fifth, and perhaps most importantly, that we have the power and responsibility to break harmful cycles, even when that means stepping away from relationships we desperately wish could be healthy. The journey hasn't been easy, and there are still moments of grief for the family relationships I wished we could have. But there is also profound peace in knowing that I did what was necessary to protect my daughter from repeating the painful patterns of my own childhood. If you're watching this and recognizing similar patterns in your own family, know that you're not alone. Setting boundaries is difficult, especially with parents, but sometimes it's the most loving choice you can make for your children and yourself. Every child deserves to feel equally valued and loved. If you've had to make similar difficult choices to protect your children, share your experience in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please hit subscribe and like to help others find this content. Remember that family isn't just about biological connection. It's about relationships that nurture and support each person's well-being. Thank you for listening to my story, and I wish you courage and clarity on your own family journey.